Hello, I'm Miss Carla, and I am here on my back porch enjoying the breeze. I'm in the shade, but I can see the sunlight in front of me, which is nice. And yeah, today we're going to read the book Show Way by Jacqueline Woodson with illustrations by Hudson Talbot. And this book, you can see, was a Newbery Honor book. Got the little sticker right there. Before I forget, I want to let you know that next week I'm going to be on vacation, so I will not be doing any story times or readings online next week. And then after that, the library is going to be moving into our phase 2 of services, so things will be changing. I'm going to try to maintain some readings and story times, but I haven't figured out exactly how that's going to go. So I can't guarantee that I'll be back the following Thursday with a story time, but keep an eye on our Facebook page, on our website, profcomlive.org, and this YouTube channel to see what kind of things are going on. And be sure and check out all the other videos on this channel, because all of our youth services people from a lot of other branches in Providence are doing amazing videos with story times and crafts and activities. So check it out. All right, we're going to do this book, and then I have a fun activity to show you. Oh, look at this. Look how on the cover it's got a hole in the cover, and then you open it up and you can see the whole quilt. This just shows us a person, but it's actually a person standing in front of a quilt with a candle lighting it up. Oh, this book is signed by the author. It says, "For Carla, with so much love, Jacqueline Woodson." Isn't that nice? I got to meet her a couple times, and she signed this book for me. Oh, and this is interesting because this is a story about Jacqueline Woodson's real family and the history of her family in the United States. And so in the dedication, she said, "For my family and in loving memory of the women who came before us." And that's with her initials, Jacqueline Woodson, after it. And then here you can see there's pictures of ladies, but they're real people. This is, I believe this is Sojourner Truth. I can't remember. So they're, do you know who that is? She looks familiar. I want to say maybe Harriet Tubman. Anyway, so they put images of real women in, like they're in the squares of the quilt, which I think is really cool. So I might have to turn this so we can see all the pictures. Okay. When Suni's great-grandma was 7, she was sold from the Virginia land to a plantation in South Carolina without her ma or pa, but with some muslin her ma had given her. And 2 needles she got from the big house, and thread dyed bright red with berries from the chokecherry tree. In South Carolina, Big Mama raised Suni's great-grandma, raised most the slave children on that large patch of land. At night, Big Mama told the children stories she'd tell in a whisper about children growing up and getting themselves free. And the children leaned in and listened real hard. And in the daytime, when there was some few minutes for a slave to rest a bit, Big Mama taught Suni's great-grandma to sew colored thread into stars and moons and roads. The slave children grew up and followed, late in the night, a piece of quilt and the true moon leading them. See how this image in the quilt looks like the way the moon is illustrated up here? Or that might be the sun. And then that's the moon. Years passed. Big Mama moved on to the next world, and Suni's great-grandma grew up, jumped broom with a young man named Ensler, had herself a baby girl and named that child Mathis May. Loved that baby up so, yes, she loved that baby up. And one day Mathis May would be Suni's grandma, but not for a long, long time yet. In the meantime, she learned to sew. Beautiful girl child learned to sew. You might already know that jumping broom, that's like a marriage ceremony they they used to do because they couldn't have a regular wedding ceremony, a legal one. When Mathis May was 7, she got sold away. Took a star from her mama's blanket, took a little piece of the road, pressed it to her face when she wanted to remember back home, held it to her heart to feel back home, got herself a piece of muslin and some thread somewhere and kept up her sewing. Sewed so fine she was making clothes for everyone in the big house and slaves too. And at night she sewed stars and moons and roads, tiny patch pieces of stars and moons and roads. Slaves whispered what no one was allowed to say. Look at this. This is the roads. Go to log cabin. Stay on drunkard's path. Walk in a zigzag line to crossroads. Look for wild geese flying to find the North Star. So that shape we saw earlier was the North Star. Those instructions are hidden in the quilt. Mathis May, slaves whispered what no one was allowed to say, that Mathis May knew how to make a showway. Came to her when they needed to talk, came to her for the stories of brave people, came to her for the patch pieces just before they disappeared into the night. But Mathis May stayed on, grew tall and straight-boned, jumped broom with another slave. That slave was killed, running off to the north side of the war months before he got to meet his baby, a girl child who was born free that same year, 1863. History went and lost her name. It's like patches sewn into a map of the United States. Do you see that? Depicting the war between the North and the South, the blue and the gray. Years later, Suni came. Suni's mama held her up in the moonlit night, showed her the stars, the moon, whispered into her ear, "There's a road, girl, there's a road." Loved that Suni up so. Yes, she loved that Suni up. Suni and her mama stayed on the land they'd always known, picking cotton for a little pay and a piece of that ground to farm. Called that land home. Stayed on with other people, none of them slaves anymore. Hard work making a life, from pink day to blue-black night. But it was a free life just the same. And when the day was finally over, wasn't hard to find a thing or two to smile about. At night they cut and sewed, strange lines and odd designs. People said about Suni, that child could find some beauty in so many things. There she is sewing. Look at them all sewing. And then even the youngest baby is laying on one of the quilts they made. When Suni was 7, she was tall and straight-boned like her mama, took in wash with her mama, sewed stars on patch pieces, sewed stars and moons and roads, sewed fields and rivers and trees, patched the pieces together for her mama to sell come market day, called those quilts Trail to the North, called the quilts Show Way. Didn't much need that secret trail to the north anymore, but started living well off the money those quilts brought in. Sewed those quilts to live, sewed those quilts to remember, and though some could book read, most could not. Stars and moons and roads, picture reading was what they'd always known. Some morning, Suni looked out over the fields of cotton and dreamed of a place to call her own. Married a man named Walter Scott, who owned a bit of land in Anderson, South Carolina, had herself a baby girl, named that girl child Georgiana. Loved that baby up so, yes, they loved that baby up. Georgiana, who grew tall and straight-boned and free, picking out words from her mama's Bible by 3, reading by oil lamp light at age 5. People say about Georgiana, she always had a book in her hand. Grew up to teach at a small school in Anderson. Had herself 2 girls at once, named them Caroline and Anne. Loved those babies up so, yes, they loved those babies up. And Caroline and Anne grew up tall and straight-boned, turned 7, walking in a line to change the laws that kept black people and white people living separate. These patches are sewed with quotes by famous people. Frederick Douglass, "There is a better day coming. Let freedom ring from every hill," Martin Luther King Jr. "When I found I had crossed that line, there was such glory over everything," Harriet Tubman. "Let my people go," a 19th century spiritual. "We who believe in freedom cannot rest," Ella Baker. "Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won," James W. Johnson. "For I am my mother's daughter, and the drums of Africa still beat in my heart," Mary McLeod Bethune. "I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery," Sojourner Truth. "No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies," Langston Hughes. They were a little bit scared sometimes, but pinned inside their dresses were show-away patches Grandma Suni had given them, and something about those patches made Scared hang his mean old head and run away. Anne grew up writing poems, and sometimes she made the poems into songs. Caroline stitched those songs into art that people bought to hang up on their walls. Anne had me, and Mama loved this baby up so, yes, she loved this baby up. So that's little baby Jacqueline Woodson, the author. And when I was 7, I didn't have to work in a field or walk in any freedom lines, but I still read like Georgiana and wrote like Anne, and when the words were slow in coming, I sewed stars and moons and roads into quilts and curtains and clothes because Mama said, all the stuff that happened before you were born is your own kind of show way. There's a road, girl, my Mama said. There's a road. And I grew up, tall and straight-boned, writing every day, and the words became books that told the stories of many people's show way. Those patches are all made up of, I believe it's all text from, it might all be text from this particular book. Yeah, it's all text from the pages we've already read, smushed up small. Had a baby and named that child Toshi, Georgiana. Love that Toshi up so, yes, I love that Toshi up. So some mornings I start all over, holding tight to little Toshi. I whisper a story that came before her. Now Suni was your great-great-grandma, and when Suni's great-grandma was 7. And there's all the ladies. Suni's great-grandma, Mathis May, Suni's mama, Suni, Georgiana, Caroline and Anne, the sisters, Jacqueline, and Toshi Georgiana. And then at the end, we have another picture of the full quilt. The end. I love that story. I love Jacqueline Woodson. She's an amazing author. She's a poet. She writes poems. She writes chapter books for middle grade kids. She writes for teenagers and adults. And then she's got some picture books. She's got several more picture books. So if you enjoyed that, I encourage you to look up more her picture books. They're all wonderful. Now, the activity that I wanted to show you today is we are going to make a quilt, but out of paper. And the quilts in the story that we just read are very important because in the very beginning, they taught people, they literally showed people a map how to escape to freedom, which was very important and was so hard for them to do. But then later, they told other stories and they kept the history of what they did before. And they were sold to help the family make money and survive and be happy and have what they needed. And now you can tell so many stories because the stories that we all have go back years and years. And in the present, we're making new stories for the future. So I thought if we make a quilt out of paper, we can make it be whatever story we want it to be. It can be something about history or our own past that we know. It can be something about us currently and the lives that we live, or it could be our hope for the future. So this is, you might recognize this if you saw my story time a couple weeks ago. This is the back of my stone soup board. We're going to use this side to make a quilt today. And I have cut up some pieces of paper, construction paper. It's mostly construction paper, but another thing I cut up was pages from a magazine because I noticed on the quilts there would be plain bright colors and then there would be fancy designs, and some of the fabric was solid colored and some of it was had different patterns on it. So I cut some things that look kind of like patterned fabric to me. This one is actually a picture of someone's dress or skirt, I think, from a magazine. So it is actually a picture of fabric, patterned fabric. This is, can you tell what that is? It's a picture of a makeup eyeshadow case, but I thought it looked kind of like patchwork squares. And these two, they look kind of cool from far away, but close up you can see that they're food. This is a salad, and this is some kind of pecan pie. So you can find all sorts of interesting pictures in magazines that you can cut out to add some designs to your quilt. Now, I would say you'd probably be best using just a glue stick. I don't have a glue stick, but I do have this little sticky tape dispenser, so I'm going to use that. So I'm going to start by putting a little bit on my board. And I cut out mostly geometric shapes. I cut out some squares. A lot of patches on quilts are squares, you may have noticed. So here's a green square. So I'm just going to stick it right here. And if you did this on a piece of paper, then it would be softer and floppier, more like a quilt. But this will be just something I can hang on my wall as a decoration. Let's see, I have a yellow rectangle. So I'm going to put that next to the green one, the green square. And I'm going to try to make them line up just about right, but if they overlap a little, it's okay. And let's see, I have a yellow, well, this kind of looks like a triangle, but it doesn't have points here. So technically that makes it a pentagon. It kind of looks like a diamond shape if you hold it this way. So I'm going to put it down here. And I haven't used blue yet. This is a blue triangle. Put that one here. Oh, I'm going to do it like this. You see this sometimes in quilts, a square made out of two different colored triangles. So if I put this one here, it'll be like a rectangle made out of two triangles. That's kind of cool. And you could plan this all out carefully ahead of time before you stick them down. You could be like me and do it spur of the moment. Let's see, I'm going to put a couple more shapes to fill this part out. I'm going to put this little green bit right here. Slide it under the edge of that yellow part so it kind of looks straight. And maybe another, oh, that's a little weird shape. Well, how about this red one? This is like a really wide red triangle I made. I'm going to put it down here. I need one more little shape here. How about, I'll take this yellow triangle and I'll fit it in there. Okay, so now I've got a little patch. You could fill this whole thing up, but I'm not going to do that right now. And then a lot of these are scraps left over from a different craft I did. So I thought, well, this is interesting. I have a big L shape. It kind of looks like a border. So I could put that around the outside and I have a border like a lot of quilts have. So I'm going to do that. Try and line this up so it looks really cool. And right now I'm just doing sort of abstract shapes. I'm not really telling a story yet, but I could use, ooh, look, I cut out this cool shape. I thought it kind of looks like a lightning bolt. So I could tell a story about, literally about lightning, about electricity, or about a really smart idea I had that struck me like lightning. And I could say that is what that's what this lightning bolt means. So I'm going to put some glue on here. And I'm just going to put it, I think I'll put it kind of on this side. Make it overlap the other shapes. And I want to use, you could literally make a quilt telling the story of all the food you like, and you could make a food-themed quilt, or you could make an art-themed quilt, or a music-themed quilt. It could be anything that describes something that matters to you, that you think is worth telling about. So I'm going to add this. Where should I put this? Down here? So this is basically like a collage. A quilt is a lot like a collage. It's just with fabric. I really like this picture because of all the colors in it and the sparkles. So I'm going to put it on there. I'll put it up here. You could also use skinnier pieces of paper or cut out letters to write words on, or you could use marker to draw wiggly lines like were stitched. And on the quilt, I think they stitched the lines using thread and it made a design on the fabric, but you could use a marker. Let's put one more. I'm going to put this beautiful fabric on here. How about down here? So this is just an example of the kind of activity you could do to make your own quilt using paper and glue and tell your own story. And if you learn to sew, you could do it with fabric and it would be really fun too. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of learning, but I think you can do it. This is a good way to start getting your ideas together. Hope you enjoyed the story and the activity, and I hope you have a wonderful week next week, and keep an eye out for updates on when my next story time is going to be. Okay? Bye-bye.